Hey guys, Wes here. So today, three big NFL topics here for today. Starting off with the two major stories coming out of Denver earlier today. Then some less important news coming out of Washington that I still want to touch on because I think there's some interesting wrinkles that stem from it. And then we'll do a little bit of a preview of the Thursday night action tomorrow featuring Jets versus the Browns, which, I don't know, we'll see how that goes. Firstly, the news out of Denver. My immediate reaction, being detail-oriented and just, dumb, just facts happening. So I was really drawn to the fact that last year, being someone who follows the Raiders, always had been a Derek Carr supporter, not a Raiders fan, just going to make that clear. But the fact that Carr was benched, supposedly, so that if he got injured, they just basically want to bench him, put him in bubble wrap so they can move on to what they thought was going to be Brady, ended up being Jimmy. That's not what we're here to talk about today. I just found it funny how Stidham happened to be the guy to replace that veteran for the final two when they weren't eliminated statistically, but practically. Come on, it was a sub 1%, I believe. Broncos more like a 6% chance, I believe, following their loss to New England, but it's going to be Stidham the last two games here, and Russ is being put in bubble wrap, not only for those vesting $37 million injury guarantees that hit next season, but if you cannot pass a physical 5 days after the Super Bowl, but also there are some incentives of passing yards, passing touchdowns, etc., that he could possibly hit in those last few games for over $2 million, and maybe there's trying to save that. I doubt the Walmart folk need those extra little millions saved. It's pocket change to them, but the main message today from Denver is they're going to be going in a different direction. Don't be fooled by this. Russell Wilson in Denver is over. They gave up an absolute haul to get him, and the mistake George Paton, the GM, made that everyone's talked about is giving him the contract before he played. But no one could have seen this fall-off coming from Russ. Russ has always been a staple. Throughout my childhood, he was always a consensus top 5 quarterback. He could always create off script. He was a great player. But what we've come to see is Pete Carroll up there in Seattle would game manage him quite a bit. All the talk of let Russ cook, they leaned on the run game. Russ had to make those plays when he had to, but he was being game managed to an extent. And then Hackett comes in, it's all love. It's these two sort of over the top happy, let Russ everything Russ's show, Russ this, Russ that. As we all know, utter disaster. I thought it was an absolute travesty that defense had to go through that, because that Denver defense last year was for real. That was one of the better defenses in recent history. That defense was stacked. Allowing less than 16 points per game and having a 5-win season. Or I believe, no, they had won 5 games. Yeah, 5-12 was their final record. And it's just ridiculous. But back to Russ. So when Peyton came in, it was basically he couldn't come in and move on from Russ. It would be you can't be tied by the cap from upwards of $50 million for 2 years. He had to give it 1 year. See if he can maybe fix it. And then move on after this year if it didn't work. That was kind of the consensus, right? And then after the 1-5 start, where it was underwhelming at best, it looked like it was done. I had almost written it off in my head. No-brainer. Russ is going to be out of there next year. Peyton's going to either go with Stidham for a bit at the start of next season while having a young QB underneath him. Because when they were 1-5, I thought they'd be picking the top 5. I thought he could just grab a rookie next year, but some of this winning that's happening as of late might not help that at all. But then they went on that win streak. They went on a 5-game heater. They were 5-5 going to Cleveland, won that game. They won that, not going into Cleveland. The game was in Denver, but bringing them to 6-5. Hey, we got some life. 3-interception game versus the Texans, as we know. Brings them to 6-6. You beat the Chargers, who were just falling apart. That win is seeming less and less impressive with each passing day. And they basically they won that game because they got an early turnover, quick touchdown, and they game managed Russ the rest of the day. Russ was really just game managed. And I just feel that kind of breathed in this life, hey, maybe this can work. But if you watch the film, their biggest plays were little dump-offs to Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin, screen to Judy, just working the tight ends in the middle. And, of course, deep shots to Sutton, which Russ was doing really well. But it felt a lot like it was just, hey, Vance finally got this defense together in the coming weeks after the disaster down in South Beach of 70 points being allowed. And it was kind of, we'll lean on the defense, don't turn it over, we'll run the ball, we'll lean on you in the fourth if we need to. That's kind of what it was with Russ. And there was obviously a massive disconnect between Russ and Peyton, right? as I said, when they were 1-5, I thought, hey, this is done. This is over. It was nice knowing you, Russ. I doubt maybe a bridge at another team at best next year, but Russ's days as a starter might be behind him. One of the fastest declines I've ever seen, by the way. But then that win streak totally changed things up. But then they've been 1-3 the last 4 games, and that loss to New England kind of just felt like a nail in the coffin. Even though it wasn't really Russ's fault, Russ played turnover free. Sean Payton made a questionable decision to go for it right at the start of the game when you know how bad the Patriots' offense is. They should just put points up on the board. Plus, numerous special teams blunders were no good for the Broncos and eventually led them to lose that game. It wasn't really Russell's fault, but it seems like it's done. It seems like it's done for him in Denver. And I know about the report that came out later from Schultz, basically saying that he was threatened to give up that money. And because that was word of mouth, I do think that's probably illegal and a breach of contract. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not the right person to speculate on that, but I'm sure that was just said mouth to mouth. That no, not in writing, not recorded. Like there's no way that would hold up if Russ tried to bring in legal stuff for it. But Russ didn't accept it. But wait, sorry, I didn't really mention what the report was. The report was that some weeks ago, apparently 6 weeks ago, Russ was told, forfeit the 37 injury guarantee or we will bench you today. And apparently had a big disagreement about it, and that was kept under wraps. I'm surprised. That shows how tight Sean Payton has that organization because I'm frankly shocked that something like that wouldn't come out. I'm shocked. If that was happening, it must have... I'm shocked Russ didn't say it to anyone in his camp. No one in Russ's camp got it out. And no Broncos reporter somehow caught wind of it or even just didn't even report on it or just said that this could be happening. There was really no word about that, so... I'm surprised that was kept under wraps, which makes it more likely that there's a chance it comes out that that's a false report, but this is still all very fresh. But let's look at what's going on with the Broncos. 5% chance to make the playoffs. They're not going to make it. They're going with Stidham the last 2 games. It's funny, Sean Payton actually said the same, let's see what we have in Stidham, which Josh McDaniels infamously said, which obviously is BS, to excuse the phrase, because Josh McDaniels was with Stidham and had worked with Stidham in New England for 3 years. I'm not buying that I don't know what we had in him type talk. You know what you had in him. It's just garbage. So I'm not buying any of that. But this is it for Russell. So he's going to likely be released, not traded, because, I mean, even in free agency, he'll get more money if you are a free agent, not if you're being traded, because then you'll have to agree to the terms of the one team that wants you, and it gets messy. I bet you they do the favor of cutting him. And this is the end of that. And it was kind of nice for Sean Payton to come to this job. I mean, I personally don't have too strong of an opinion of Sean Payton either way. Some people say he's a very overrated head coach. I feel like he's overrated by some people for sure, but he has a proven track record. People can say, oh, he had Breeze. Look what happened when Breeze left. But that was a weird 3-year sample size. New Orleans has been a mess for ages. Don't even get me started on New Orleans these last 4 years. But anywho, back to what I was saying. Hackett was so bad with Russ last year, it was either that, hey, if Sean Payton comes in and things are good with Russ, he's a hero. He's an offensive genius. He fixed Russell Wilson. He's a great coach. He saved Russ. He'll get all the credit. And if things go bad, he'll get none of the blame. He got to have his cake and eat it too. If things went well, he could have all the credit. Oh, he saved Russ. And then if it's bad, they'll say, look, 2 different coaches, 2 different years, 2 different systems. Russ has sucked. Russ is washed. So Payton would walk off scratch-free regardless. And it looks like he does not want to waste any more time on Russell Wilson and is not happy about it. I mean, it just... Honestly, right from the jump, to me, this whole season felt like a formality. There was just no way you could logically say, I'm not even going to try with him. I'm just going to kick him to the curb before the season starts and take that massive cap hit for 2 seasons. Eating it for 1 is okay. Eating it for 2, it really puts your franchise in a weird spot. So he was able to put enough on tape, get some wins, do some good stuff, instill confidence from the fan base, from ownership, and Sean Payton's ability with that team. But it looks like things are done. So for my money... I think they're going to draft a guy. They could bring in a bridge guy, a guy Sean Payton's worked with in the past that he likes, that he can just have there. You know what I mean? As a bridge guy when they draft. But the problem is it's starting to look like they're going to be drafting later, like a double-digit pick. So past 10. No way they get into the top 10 with 7 wins. Not going to happen. There's too many teams around that 5-6 range, whatever, right? So best case scenario, they're picking 10th or 11th, even if they lose out, giving them a 7-10 record. So that means you can cross off Drake May. You can cross off Caleb Williams. And in my opinion, I think Jaden Daniels is going to really climb mock drafts as this time goes on, as these scouts can really dive into the film, because what Jaden Daniels can do dual threat is quite special, and that seems to be what everyone in the league wants. They all want that dual threat option. They want, you know what I mean? They want a quarterback with legs. They want a talented quarterback, etc. He's talented in those areas. He has a great arm. LSU quarterbacks, there's a pedigree there. Well, not really. I mean, Joe Burrow and what's the other guy's name? Well, wait a minute. Jamarcus Russell. Whoa. Yeah. So they're looking at maybe Bo Nix, but Bo Nix could go higher. So they're really looking at like a Michael Penix Jr. They're maybe looking at a second-round project quarterback. It's really looking kind of strange for them what happens here. I mean, there's probably going to be some great quarterback options in the free agent market, but I just don't know if it's Sean Payton's cup of tea. And something tells me Sean Payton would love to have his own guy, a blank canvas. You hear a lot of these offensive coaches just talking about how nice it is to have a blank canvas. I remember once I was listening to Josh McDaniels talk about just how refreshing it was for him to have the blank canvas of Mac Jones. And, I mean, Josh McDaniels, say what you want about him as a head coach, great offensive mind. He is. I stand on that. He essentially walks in through that door with Mac Jones, and look what they did with the results. So I'm sure Sean Payton will want to get his own guy into the building, either to be an understudy to a bridge guy or just give him the reins right away. And hey, let's see what Stidham can do. Maybe Stidham will be the bridge guy if he can put some good stuff on tape these last two games. It's hard to say what there is in Stidham, because if you recall last year with the Raiders, he actually had an incredible game against the 49ers in his first start. But if you give a guy like Josh McDaniels a quarterback that nobody has any tape on, I mean, you'd expect it to be decent. I mean, the fact that made it impressive was how good that 49ers defense is and how he was still able to look like that. But then you saw him have a rough week the next week against the Chiefs, and say what you want. Maybe Chiefs did get up early in that game. Maybe it was just a little bit of he had a bad game script and he's still new, and just, it's not like it was terrible. It's just he didn't really show anything near the level he showed in the 49ers game. But yeah, this looks like this is the end of Russ in Denver. I mean, some people are saying, wait, maybe he restructures, but I just don't see how you can come back from this. You've benched him when you're still in it. It's not like, oh, we're just playing out the balance of the season. Season's over. We're out of contention. We don't want you to get hurt. Let's give this guy some reps. It's not like that. You can't sell it as that. If they win out, they do have a chance. I don't have it pulled up right now, but I'll check later on the New York Times. I'm certain. Because if the Raiders win out, I know they have a 63% chance. So if the Broncos win out, I think they have like a 40% chance of making it. So they're winnable games. They got the Raiders and then they got the Chargers. 2 divisional games against 2 rather inferior quarterbacks. And Easton Stick, who's looked like something, but is he really something? And Aiden O'Connell, who Christmas Day against the Chiefs, that's the most game managed I've ever seen a quarterback be. So in tomorrow's episode, I will talk about this Denver wrinkle some more. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think Jarrett Stidham has some tools. I actually probably liked him to beat the Chargers. I actually probably liked him to beat the Chargers at home up there in Denver. I think they get that game. But anyways, this is the end for Russell Wilson, in Denver at least. And I would be very surprised if he lands as a actual franchise guy next year with like a multi-year contract where you're paid to be the guy. I can't see him be anything more than the most overglorified backup ever. That's a bit extreme, or a bridge. Because, I mean, I've been talking to people about this just today. A friend of mine follows football really well. He was saying, well, look at some of the awful quarterbacks around the league. Some team will throw some money at him, but is that really a good decision? I mean, do people really want to tie their jobs to that? I don't know. But, yeah, we'll talk more about Denver and Russ later. Now, to jump into what's going on up in Washington. They play the 49ers at home. They're 13.5-point dogs at FedEx Field, their home field, which is embarrassing. That means a neutral site, it would be like 18-point spread. And in 49er land, down there at Levi Stadium, they'd be 20-point underdogs, which is ridiculous. That would have to be the biggest spread of the season. See, Giants versus Cowboys is pretty dang big too, but I don't believe it was more than like 18. That game was Tommy DeVito start, whatever, right? At Jerry World too. That was bound to get ugly, and it did. The spread covered in favor of the Cowboys. But anywho, yeah, what's going on there? Jacoby Brissett is starting this game, and this is weird to me. I mean, it's just weird. what does it matter? Brissett's obviously going to be a backup the rest of his career. He's not very good. He's just a bad quarterback. He doesn't have any wow tools, not a wow arm. I mean, he has really no rushing upside. His reads aren't good. He's not that smart. I mean, I just don't think that he's anything in this league. Like, hell, he might even be a third stringer. I don't think he's good. I'm very low on Jacoby Brissett. I don't. There's nothing on the tape that makes you say, hey, this guy has something. This guy is somebody. Anyways, back to what I was saying. And they're benching Sam Howell for him. And, I mean, the writing is on the wall for Ron. He's done. Same with GM Martin Mayhew. I mean, new owner came in. It seemed like the memo was kind of, make the playoffs, I'll give you another year. And it looked like they did. They were 2-1, and they had the Eagles in overtime. I still believe they should have gone for 2 at the end of that game. They were never going to win that game in overtime, and that was a bad decision by Coach Ron. I don't know why they even call him Riverboat Ron. Doesn't even have any balls. Didn't even go for that play. Anyways, I'm kind of getting off the rails here, but I don't get it. Like, what are you trying to do, Ron? Like, maybe Jacoby gives you a teeny bit of a better chance to win, but why? I mean, I understand that, the reason to start Howell will be to develop him, but if you know you're not going to be there, why develop him for someone else? And I guess wants to throw out Jacoby to make it less embarrassing for what? His resume, his legacy. Like, his legacy as a player speaks for himself. He's won Coach of the Year. He took a team to the Super Bowl. Ron Rivera's been a pretty solid head coach. I mean, with all the crazy crap going on up there in D.C., the way he's weathered the storm a little bit has been all right. But obviously the writing's on the wall. He's a coach on the defense side of the ball. Del Rio got canned. I'm surprised he actually Ron didn't get canned after that loss to Dallas. But I guess new owner Josh Harris wants to just be patient with it. He doesn't want to early give him, just in case he fires a new coach pretty early, he doesn't want to have this thing like, he's just firing. He doesn't want to. All these guys are seeing David Tepper, and they're like, I do not want to take that crown from him. Let him be the crazy bad owner of the league, right? I don't want to be that, right? So I guess that's going on there, but back to what I was saying. I don't get the benching of Howell there. I don't get it. Just play him. I mean, I think he's good. I mean, what? Like, he has a ton of pass yards, but he also leads the league in attempts. He's had a lot of picks lately. Last few games have been rough. I'll say that. Last few games have been rough. But he's shown some great things. Like, I saw him in the Seattle game on the road in the rain. He hit some no-name receiver, De'Ami Brown, who was one of the guys that Amon-Ra St. Brown had beef with. You know. But that guy's really a nobody. Hit him on a beautiful route there. And it just doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't have Howell in there. I mean, this is just weird stuff going on. I mean, I don't know what's going on up there. I don't even know why I'm talking about this. This is literally a non-story, and it doesn't matter if this coaching staff is benching Howell because they won't be there next year. It'll be the new regime, the new GM, and the new coach's decision on Howell. So Ron Rivera choosing to do this doesn't really mean anything. It just is 2 less games of tape on Howell, and the tape is what it is. I don't think this will make a difference for Howell for next year because those people making those decisions, and Martin Mayhew and Ron Rivera, they won't be there next year. They just won't be there. So this doesn't really hurt Howell, I don't think. Obviously the last 2 games have hurt him. They haven't been good. I think he played like one half against the Jets, and he had like 16 incompletions. It was ugly. He couldn't even hit Gibson out of the backfield. I don't know what was going on there, but the flashes I've seen from Howell are really impressive. I mean, early on in the season, he was actually a great fantasy option. I mean, every time I bet the over on his pass yards, most notably on Thanksgiving, the American Thanksgiving versus the Cowboys. And, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Sam Howell has some really good tools. I think he was a steal in the 5th round. And if he's not in Washington next year, he'll be somewhere. And he has a future in this league 100%. Just weird stuff going on. Don't know why Jacoby's playing. I would destroy that Niners spread if I'm anyone that's interested in gambling. I mean, Niners by 2 touchdowns, especially coming off that loss to the Ravens. They're going to be hungry. They're going to want it. And they are going to eat Jacoby Brissett alive. Anyways, so that story's done. Now, on to the Thursday night football game. What do you know? Browns versus the Jets. My prediction on this one's pretty easy. I got the Browns winning. I have the Browns winning this football game. 24-13. Maybe 24-10 I might change it to. I think this is going to be what it is. Let's see. If I go 24-13, that actually means the over would be hitting. So that has some significance to some. Anyway, I think it's 34.5. Anyway, not that I'm advising anyone to gamble, but if you look at it, how this game's going to go, it's Trevor Siemian. I don't know. Like, against that front seven, forget about it. Have you seen what the Browns have been doing? I think this game is going to be a weird, ugly field goal fest that the Browns win. I think they're going to win it pretty handily. If the Browns somehow win the North, even if they don't, even if they have to go on the road throughout the playoffs, if they're higher than 13-1 to win the Super Bowl, I might put a couple $100 on that because I see this defense. I see this defense, and I see Joe. I mean, I feel like they're putting a little too much on Joe. Like, in a closer game like last week against the Texans, he had 2 bad interceptions, almost a third. I mean, I know Cooper went off, and those were all the stories, but if that was a more competitive team, those in the playoffs, they will be more competitive teams. Those error throws will hurt you, and I just don't think you can have old man Joe throwing it 45 times a game. I mean, he's accurate. He has the deep throw. He has all that, but I think they still need to lean on the run, lean on their tight end, and lean on the defense. Obviously, Jim Schwartz has done a magnificent job there. The Jets are just a mess, okay? Let's face it. This is a mess. This was a house of a foundation of sticks and stones. And those sticks and stones are Aaron Rodgers, and they're flimsy. He's old, 40 years old. I mean, the one thing I don't get about the Jets is, I know why they did. They did it so Rodgers' ego wouldn't get hurt. Because if there was a competent backup, Rodgers' ego would get hurt. He would feel it's not my show. Like, if he has a bad day of practice, the other guy has a good day of practice, it just makes things more awkward on him. He didn't want that. But if the team is that stacked on the quarterback, you have to have a better option there. You have to prepare for the worst, and you have to tell Rodgers that. There's been way too much catering to Rodgers, and frankly, it looks like it's going to continue. I think this catering to Rodgers is going to continue because Robert Saleh's already gotten a vote of confidence, and Nat Hackett's not going anywhere. Hackett's going nowhere. He's definitely going to remain as the offensive coordinator. The only answer I can think of is they have to bring in a really solid backup for next season, or you can't justify running this back because they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again with the same result, and basically the definition of idiocy is making the same mistake twice. So you got to bring in a really competent backup, I feel. And let's see what they can do. I mean, if Rodgers plays, I'm actually looking, even in half PPR, to target Garrett Wilson early second round. I mean, I see all the tools are there. I don't like Brees as high as 5th. He's going as the 105 in some drafts. Crazy, right? But anyways, seeing me wince, there may or may not be some rum in that. Anywho, listen. The Jets are going to be something next year. They're not going to be anything this year. I mean, it's in their best interest to lose this game. It was in their best interest to lose last week. I mean, I know in the first round they're going to address the tackle position. So they got the kid out of Penn State. They got Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. And there's that one other guy. But it seems like they're going to pick in the top 8, and I bet they'll get one of those guys. So if they're going for those guys, moving from 8th to 5th doesn't matter. It's not like they're taking a quarterback. It's not like any of that, right? Like, the position's obviously going to be a tackle. Like, it's glaringly obvious that that's the early first round pick that's going to be addressed. So I guess when you're losing doesn't matter. I mean, if you lose too much and it gets too ugly, and like it has in some of these games versus the Bills and the Dolphins twice, actually. That horrible Hail Mary on Black Friday, whatever, right? But yeah, I think the Browns win tomorrow night pretty handily. I'm actually going to start Riley Patterson at kicker in my big money leagues. They actually got him from the Lions because Hopkins isn't kicking for Cleveland. I think it's going to be a field goal fest for both teams, actually, and I think it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game, exactly what you'd expect. Not a crazy prediction. I don't know what the spread is, but I'm taking the Browns to win by, 10-ish, so if it's a single-digit spread, take the Browns with confidence. And, yeah, take something like Brees Rex. There'll be some dump-offs. Just do what you want to do, but it's not the kind of game that really gets me fired up. I mean, it's one of those type of games where if I don't have betting on it or fantasy implications on it, I'm not, jumping out my seat excited for, oh, no, what's going to happen? How's this game going to go? Et cetera, et cetera. And, yeah, I don't really have any much more to say. If this gets posted somewhere, this actually is technically my first episode ever. I'm not really thinking about what I'm going to do with all this, but it's just an important goal of mine to just talk football, you know what I mean? Just have a platform, give my thoughts. In the future, I want to get into some mock drafts. I want to do fantasy football sit starts, betting advice, predictions, covering stories, my opinions on the future of the league, what's going to happen. And, yeah, if anyone sees this, thank you. And Christmas was yesterday, so Merry Christmas to anyone watching. Thank you.